Okay, so we're going to go over a few things that happened this year. As we all know, we have a new administration with Inauguration Day. I won't go through every point on the slide, but the gist of it is that we've had a string of executive orders that has caused us to rethink and reshape how we approach our work. A couple of them have to do with gender ideology, which impacts the transgender community and how they are identified in our systems. The ending of DEI programs and things of that nature. So that impacts people of marginalized populations. Um, We've had a couple of events where federal staff on the DEI initiatives were put on administrative leave, terminating of contractors and removing of outward-facing media. In January, there was a temporary pause on all federal funding, which was rescinded a couple of days later. So those are just a few of the things that has happened, and of course, the snowball of events continue to take place. So the impact of the executive orders. So of course, we've seen some initiatives for DEI in select corporations and education institutions rolled back. Due to some of the executive orders, we've seen some deportation of refugees and asylum seekers. Homeless service providers who specialize in that work are impacted in that way. We've seen the slow rollout of new HUD contracts as they close some of the field offices and as folks transition out of positions. Agencies struggle to maintain rental assistance and general operations while they wait for a new contract, so that's being affected as well. The closing of select HUD offices across the country. We've seen USICH disbanded and employees either reassigned or terminated. Um, We've recently seen notifications sent to nonprofits to eliminate use of what is called woke language, policies, and practices, with an entire list of words that are um, being seen as inappropriate for work use. So, that's lack of better words. We have agencies electing to find alternative funding in an effort to decline federal funding. And then most recently, we've got the rollout of the 2026 federal budget, which is looking to further cut cost of HUD, specifically rental assistance, by more than 50%. So this affects all of our work and all that we do. And so none of this is taken lightly on how we approach this. Having said that, we're looking to do a temperature check to see how you would feel about maybe weekly or biweekly town hall meetings so that we can unpack some of this. If you were around for COVID-19, it will be similar to what was done for the COVID-19 pandemic, designed to provide updates, review any action steps, maybe explore advocacy options and share information as we have them for resources. And of course, all of this is brought on by the changes of the government administration here. So I want to take a pause and maybe hear back. And Katie, if you can just help me with the audience and just seeing hands raised or questions, because I can't see that right now. Um, I just want to hear back from you for a quick second. First of all, is this meeting series of interest to you? Is this something that you would want to see happen so that we can unpack some of this stuff and maybe come together? Any show of hands, heart emojis, question emojis?
We have some yeses coming in the chat.
Okay,
Got
all right.
one feedback, yes, but weekly might be difficult for schedules.
Okay, weekly might be okay. So maybe twice a month. Are we looking at twice a month here?
Yeah, I
Can
see
we get
a couple of posts in favor for biweekly, that biweekly feels feasible.
Okay, I like it. That is the feedback we are looking for. Yes, ma'am. Okay, Now, and this may have to go out to a poll, but I'm looking at maybe what days and times. Are we looking at? I know that for the COVID-19, it used to be Friday mornings, but transparently, we've got a couple of meetings that we may not be able to do it at that time anymore. Are we looking at Friday afternoons, or a general consistency? You can throw it into the chat, and we can just collect it later. But looking to get some of that feedback. And then if anybody wants to come off the mic to cover any of these other questions, what topics would you like to see covered? Questions that we can unpack. And generally, how do you feel about the changes that's happening? Like all of those three questions may actually be addressed with one, all in one. So right now, just trying to get a temperature check of just how people feel. Dr. Thomas, yes, ma'am.
Hi, folks. I'm particularly interested in how these impact Detroit, right, or the Metro Detroit area. We belong to a few state and national networks, and it's good to hear it at that level. But as we're navigating the contracts we're getting, and reading their new language and so on, I'm particularly interested in just getting to that nitty-gritty of how is this going to impact Detroit's work. So if you all are able to help with that, I think that would be hugely helpful.
Yes, and I believe that as we get some of this rollout with the new contracts for the season, that can help with numbers wise. It's specifically helping with some of that as well. I don't know if we have the answer for that because, as we mentioned before, the contracts have been slow to roll out. So we will definitely be on the lookout to find out what those numbers are looking like for the future. I definitely understand. Please, 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 I'll take a couple more people.
We've got a couple things in the chat I'll flag too.
Yes.
So we've got just by way of timing wise, we had a number of different things thrown out so we can consider that, but there does seem to be kind of a general consensus to try to avoid Fridays, that may be difficult. End of week burnout, people taking off, those kind of things. Also, there was a request to avoid Mondays for the same people taking off.
So
Um,
midweek. Okay.
yeah, and then there's some kind of elevation of maybe like mid-morning, mid-afternoon, kind of in the middle of things, could be helpful.
Okay. Midweek,
Um,
lunch hour. Okay.
and then topics wise, there's a request to potentially help get some information about what an executive order can actually do and what it can't do, and maybe thinking about what those impacts are for our community. There's also requests for political activism and alternative funding. Um, and then there was a request around asking for some information about some of the changes addressing race, ethnicity, and gender identification, if those will be updated in the data standards. And so that question was answered through some chat, but just maybe naming, like, to Dr. Thomas's point, like that thinking about some of the impacts locally and what that means and helping folks understand how that impacts our practices and how we want to pivot.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All of this is helpful. So, according to the consensus here, we're looking at about midweek, maybe a Tuesday or a Wednesday. Um, or even Thursday, but perhaps Tuesday or Wednesday midweek, mid-morning to early afternoon, so somewhere between 11 and 2 at the very latest. And we've got some marching orders of what we would like our first agenda topics to cover. Give us we'll probably start this sometime in June, to give some time for people to think about things of how they would like to do them. But I'd like to see this rolled out in the beginning of June, so that we can gear up and start talking about these things. I'm going to thank you for your feedback. I am not turning off the chat, but I am going to continue on with the presentation. So please, if you have any more feedback for this, we welcome it in the chat. So, to cover this, we know that these are troubling times, but we have seen troubling times before. And my stance is if we can do it before, we can do it again. All it takes is that we link together, we lean on each other, we brave the storm, and we can and we will get through this. So what's happening now? We've got hand. We're meeting internally for contingency planning, which brought on, some of this talk about the town hall meetings and how we can further get information on how we can show up as a lead agency for our providers. We've got advocacy conversations occurring across the COCs. So as a representative myself of what's called the Southeast Michigan COC Black Club, that's a collective of COC lead agencies across Southeast Michigan. And one of the agenda topics is to find out how we can show up bigger and show up as a collective across Southeast Michigan and maybe even statewide. We've got to lift up the sense of urgency to explore solutions outside of government funding with creativity for housing options. So we are going to try to explore that in our meetings. Um, Seeking more of a concentration to move clients out of government assistance due to the newly proposed 2-year maximum for rental assistance. So in addition to the funding cuts, they also is looking to slash PSH to 2 years maximum is what we saw in the proposed 2026 budget. And so as we see this and know this, to see how many people we can move to self-sufficiency to make room and then to make room for others who may need assistance, but then also to try to get folks away from government assistance as much as possible if they're looking to do more and more cuts. We just want to make sure that we save families instead of, you know, just we don't want to hurt families. So we're looking to find as many solutions as possible to keep them out of the state of homelessness. We're looking to do high performance to move clients to self-sufficiency. That may be a heavy concentration for future contracts. So as mentioned before, it's going to be a 2-year maximum. I suspect that performance is going to be one of the things for future funding to see how many agencies has helped folks to move people into self-sufficiency. Maybe in a meeting, we can talk about empathetic messaging to clients concerning today's times and the need for increased participation. So we're by no means accusing people of saying that they're not doing anything for themselves, but we would be remiss if we did not tell them what's happening and how it may impact them and the need for them to, increase their participation so that they don't fall through the cracks and be left in dire straits. Again, town hall meetings may help to guide discussion and uncover action plans. So I'm going to turn it over to Katie, who's going to talk about some of those advocacy options for agencies as well as individually. So Katie, if you will, I'm going to turn the slides over and you can let me know when to go to the next one.
Wonderful, thank you. Yes, so we talked about at our last meeting, just that advocacy was really important and we wanted to encourage folks to advocate. I think it's of no surprise to any of us that advocacy in this time remains important and urgent, I would say. And so, John, I saw and noted your request in the chat about talking about advocacy. So we're talking a little bit about it here. And then as we lean into these meetings and launch them, I think we can definitely lean more into advocacy as well. Also thinking about, Celia, your point of how can we tailor this specifically to our local community as well, and think about the specific impacts in our community and elevate those. And so just starting off here, just kind of highlighting some ways that advocacy can look. I think we can all get involved in different ways, and just want to name that there's a whole host of ways that we can raise our voice, raise our concerns, advocate for our community, work to protect the work that we're doing. So, first and foremost, as much as possible, trying to stay informed with what's going on. Recognizing though that there is so much happening all the time, and it can be overwhelming, but I think it can be helpful to plug into newsletters from trusted sources, whether that be national organizations that we follow. I think a lot of our national orgs are really working to try to help the community disseminate what information is most going to impact us in this work. But there's also, just different folks that you can follow as well, political analysts, things like that. But not trying to feel like you have to research it all yourself, but finding people who you trust to disseminate it to you to get that information, to help avoid getting overwhelmed and then unplugging. We encourage folks to call, write letters, write emails to your legislators. We also encourage you to connect with your legislators in person, attend town halls, and other events that they may be having, and elevate to them the concerns about the actions that are happening at the federal level and how that impacts you personally, how that impacts those you work with, how that impacts your family, really elevating those impacts. I attended a training by the ACLU recently on advocacy, and they really highlighted actually the importance of stories over statistics, that statistics can be helpful, but really sharing personal stories, helping folks see that tangible impact can be really meaningful and really stick with folks, that stories are powerful. And so, getting in as many spaces as possible and sharing those stories, sharing the impact can be really helpful. Sign on to advocacy initiatives that you believe in as well. There's a whole host of letters that folks are creating, opportunities to sign on to those letters, to participate in email blasts, those kind of things. As I mentioned as well, sharing stories is really impactful, gathering stories, helping to share those, participating in advocacy events. There was just an advocacy event with MICA, the Michigan Coalition Against Homelessness. They had an advocacy day. NAEH is going to have a virtual Capitol Hill Day. To my understanding, it's going to be later this year, maybe in I think September is what I saw when I last checked. So that could be a great opportunity to get involved. Other events as well for organizations that you're a part of. And also volunteering for advocacy opportunities. I've been trying to plug into the work the ACLU is doing. And they have a lot of opportunities to volunteer and get involved, really share information about local things that are happening. There's an ACLU Michigan branch, and share information about local events and ways to get engaged and ways you can help support that work. I see a hand, so I'll pause.
Yes, Cass.
Slide. Cass, go right ahead.
Yeah, hi. I'm sorry. I was gonna save this for the community comments or public comments or whatever, but it's relevant, so I figured I would plug it. I don't know how aware people are of House Bill 4197. This is some state level activism we can do. This is a homeless bill of rights. What this would do is this would help protect our clients' privacy. So like a backpack would have to be treated with the same level of respect and right to privacy as like a personal home. It would spell out the right to exist in public, meaning they could just be in the park and you can't just be calling the cops on them just because they're there. And arguably one of the biggest, most important things is that this defines something called safe outdoor spaces. And this is defined as a sanctioned encampment area owned or operated by a local unit of government where an individual experiencing homelessness could lawfully reside. This basically means the city would have the right to say survival is decriminalized here and people can camp here and they're allowed to be here and no one can make them leave. You cannot tear this encampment down. They have a right to be here. I just sent like a big master post, the bill, the timeline, the committee it's been referred to, the head of that committee's email. The city also wants this. They have sent a memo to both the House and the Senate calling for this bill's passage. The memo they sent was technically under its old number because it died in the last council and then was reintroduced, or the last Senate or whatever, and was reintroduced after the elections. How to find your rep, and I have a Google Doc template for you to write to if you need help. So I just wanted to plug this.
Yeah, how do we plug into that, Cass?
Well, what do you mean plug in?
Yeah, as far as is there anything that we need to do for that? Do we sign a petition? Ways to get
Email
involved?
Brian Beagle. Let that man know no peace. He is the head of the committee that is holding this bill up. It hasn't been brought up again since it was reintroduced in March. And it kind of seems like intentional that it's being left there to die because this is a very big committee. Let him know no peace. Don't let your rep know any peace. Light him up and tell him that you want this.
Okay.
And reposting, I saw the email for Brian Beagle in the in your master post. I pulled it out for anyone who needs to access it easy as well. Thank you, Cass, so much for elevating that. I think this is a perfect example exactly of being informed, and I think being informed of something positive that's happening too, to help protect our community in the midst of things where it feels like we're under attack. And so thank you so much for elevating this. I'll coordinate as well with our team to get this. We've got an advocacy website to get this added onto that website as well, possibly push it out via our newsletter and future communications. But thank you for sharing in real time a way we can get engaged and protect the people that we serve. Wonderful. Okay, so I wanted to just hone in a little bit with you all just to give a sense on where we're at with the funding landscape, and as an opportunity for advocacy, as a means for us that we need to stay informed about what's happening, to help kind of disseminate what this impact can look like for us, and you know, and share as an opportunity to advocate as well. So just to kind of give some framing for kind of how our funding is structured. So right now, our COC is currently operating budgets that were approved last year during fiscal year 2024. So the fiscal year 2024 COC grants start sometime throughout the year in 2025. Everyone's grants start at different times. There's no single start date for these grants. So they start sometime throughout this year. So many people are starting those. We heard people elevating that the contracts look different. So those whose grants have renewed recently, their fiscal year 2024 grants have renewed. They're seeing those changes in their contracts. And some people are still operating on fiscal year 2023 funding as we wait for their fiscal year 2024 grant to start sometime later in this year. So fiscal year 2024 grant starts sometime in 2025 and will end sometime in 2026. And so then we're currently in the government in fiscal year 2025. And that budget is currently operating under a continuing resolution, which means that they didn't approve a formal fiscal year 2025 budget. They just approved to basically prolong the 2024 budget through the year. This resolution runs through September, but from analysts who are smarter than me, the understanding is that the intention of Congress, they've really moved their sights beyond 2025, have kind of just decided to keep 2025 moving under the frame of 2024, and moved their sights onto the fiscal year 2026 budget. So what this means for us is that there are, on the positive side, no major cuts to COC funding, that they're not making slashes because they're continuing it from 2024. But by not having any increases in funding that take into account cost of living changes and other adjustments, we do anticipate to see some form of cuts. We don't know what that will look like yet, what that impact will be on communities, how deep that will be, but there is a sense that we will see some deficit in operating because we don't have that standard increase from year to year. And just to give a sense of when we'll see that happen, these fiscal year 2025 budgets will start sometime in 2026, sometime next year, and run through 2027. But as I mentioned, it seems that the energy right now in federal budget making world is on the fiscal year 2026 budget. And the energy is not great, to be frank. So there's a budget that the president released not that long ago called a skinny budget. And if this budget gets approved by Congress, gets moved forward by Congress, this would have major cuts and major impacts for our work. So I don't have a full analysis of this budget, but just highlighting kind of a few major things for us to have in mind. So one thing that's proposed in the fiscal year 2026 budget is to completely do away with COC funding and merge existing programs into ESG funding. So this would mean that there would be no more COC planning funding, no more CAM funding, and we would likely see cuts to other program and funding as well. So we would, the infrastructure that helps support our system as a whole would likely go away, and we anticipate also that there would be a pretty big decrease in what's funded overall. And so we would see a loss in programming. There's also, I don't have this written here, but just also naming too that in folding things into ESG, there's also chatter around changing, doing away with permanent supportive housing and putting a 2-year time limit on any funding that people receive, any housing support, any rental assistance that folks receive, capping that assistance at 2 years, which would have major impacts on our community and the folks that we serve. And there's also been chatter around implementing work requirements or other sorts of requirements into eligibility for this. So changing the eligibility requirements from what we currently see. So a number of ways that this could really impact the communities, and want to name here that if these fiscal year 2026 budget changes go into effect, grants would start operating under this budget sometime in 2027. So to help us kind of like frame what this means, in as soon as a year and a half from now, we could see a major overhaul of our system and the way that it operates. But I know that sounds bleak. I do want to highlight though that this is still being discussed. They're just in the proposal phases, so nothing is final yet. So this is our time to raise our voices, to let our representatives know that we are not okay with this, that this would really impact the community, to advocate to protect COC funding and the work that we're doing. So now is really the time to lean in, to advocate, to engage with your representatives and to let them know that we don't want this skinny budget for our community. I also wanted to highlight some additional advocacy considerations as you're getting engaged, some things to keep on your radar. So as we've talked about many times before, as we all know, the homeless system doesn't exist in a vacuum. And our system is impacted by things that happen to other social systems in our community, other social supports that people receive. So cuts to other social safety nets and supports directly impact our system, directly impact our clients, and they directly impact ourselves as well. So I highlighted a few things that are under attack right now, or to use less intense language, that are being proposed to be cut, or major changes are being proposed that we should keep our eyes on, that we should advocate against, that we should work to protect. And so Medicaid, Social Security, SNAP, which is public food benefits, women's health, Head Start, education. This is just to name a few. There's so many more. Really, just wanting to name that sometimes we can hone our focus in only on the homeless system and the cuts to our system, but really cuts anywhere to anything that protects vulnerable people, it is going to impact our work and impact our community. I also just wanted to elevate that we should keep our eye on legislation that impacts our rights and impacts the rights of our community. This is just one example of many, but it's a relevant and salient one right now, which is the SAVE Act. This act was proposed initially in the House. It did pass the House of Representatives. It's now in the Senate. The good news is it has a bit more of an uphill battle in the Senate, but it's still time to advocate. This bill is trying to change voting rights for people. It's trying to put more strict measures around requiring proof of citizenship to vote. But it's going to have bigger impacts than just immigrants. There's advocacy that this would not only impact folks who've immigrated into the country, but it's also going to impact people who've changed their name in any form since birth. This may be women who've gotten married. This may be folks who are adopted. And this also means our trans community as well. And so there's a lot of people who would be impacted by this and may lose the right to vote, or make it really difficult for them to be able to vote. And so this is a an important act for us to protect our voices, to protect the voices of our community, and to make sure that they don't take away our right to raise our voice and push back against policies that aren't working for our community. So, just naming this. And one other kind of frame or thing to keep our eyes on as well is, in addition to advocating at the federal level, would really encourage folks to get engaged at the state and local level as well, to start attending city council meetings, to start building relationships with city council members, and encouraging, talking to them, seeing what's feasible. What resources do we have in our local community? What resources do we have at the state level that can protect our community, that can protect the people who would be impacted by these cuts? Are there ways that we can put safety nets in? So if there are federal cuts, there are other resources in our community that we can be leveraging to support our community. So just naming some additional things for you to kind of think about as ways that you can get engaged, ways that you can get involved, in ways I would really encourage you to do so if you have time and capacity. Next slide. I went to change the slide and realized I'm not controlling them. Sorry. So then I just also want to name, though, that this is a partnership. We want to do this together. So we want to continue to provide ongoing updates to you all in support as you engage in advocacy. So we have a website that we are trying to update with helpful advocacy information. We'll continue to update that, continue to share things across our newsletter. Now that we've heard the interest as well in these community meetings from you all, there will also be opportunities for us to coordinate around advocacy as well. I wanted to just open this up as well, just to see what else you all need from us to support as you engage in advocacy. So we've been trying to share information out with our newsletter, trying to share it out on our advocacy, on our website. Does that work, sending it out in the newsletter? Would it be helpful if we had a specific listserv that's just advocacy updates, that we're just sharing information about advocacy, so it's not in the rest of the newsletter? Is there specific information or data that we can share that would be helpful? And are there ways that we want to organize as a community and come together to advocate collectively? And would you be interested in us helping to organize that? So if you have thoughts to these questions now, I would welcome them. I also recognize that we just shared a lot of information. And so if you want to reflect on these questions and reach out to myself or Tamara, we would also welcome your answers at a later time. But I'll pause here just to see if anyone has any immediate reactions about what might be helpful for you. But if not, then we can move forward as well. Wonderful. I'm glad the newsletter is helpful. And is it okay, Olivia, that the advocacy updates come in the context of other updates? Have you still been able to see those advocacy opportunities and get engaged? Okay, wonderful. That's great to hear. And just flagging too, some of my colleagues have started to put some opportunities to get involved in the chat. Eleanor shared the city council meeting information, so how you can get those details. Kim put the link to our advocacy webpage in the chat. And then also Eleanor shared an opportunity. The city of Detroit is having some conversations about the consolidated plan. There's some specific conversations in there that are going to be talking about HUD funding and the impacts to that. And so definitely encourage folks to take that flyer and join those meetings if you're able. And thank you, Dr. Thomas. I see your affirmation that the existing newsletter format is working. So that's great. So if anyone else has any additional thoughts about what we can do to be supportive as you all engage and raise your voice, let us know. And then we also, I just wanted to share again, this was shared at our last general membership meeting, but just wanted to flag that these are some helpful places for you all to start. There are a number of links here of places you can get involved. So NAEH advocacy, they've got a specific listserv just on advocacy, and they're sending out information about advocacy and ways to get involved. There's a funding advocacy guide. We talked just recently about the impacts of the 2026 funding. So NLIHC has put together an advocacy guide to advocate about our funding. There's a legislation tracker that Micah has put together. There is an executive order impact tracker, specifically the impact on nonprofits. There is an advocacy platform that you can get engaged in called 5 Calls. There's some information and resources around how to tell compelling stories. There's also information and resources just as a nonprofit, what parameters there are around advocacy for your agency. I also, this is new this time, but I added the link to the volunteer sign up for ACLU, and then also just reshared our HAND advocacy webpage. So I will, after I finish speaking here, I can start plugging these links into the chat for you all so you can have them. But just wanted to name a few places for you to get started because I know it can be overwhelming to think about where to start.
We have a hand raised. Alan, go ahead, please. Alan, are you there? We'll give you a couple more seconds, Mr. Rosetto. You're still on mute if you are talking and we can't hear you.
It may be related to Alan popped a helpful resource in the chat a little bit ago that one of our congressmen is offering mobile community offices to support folks whose benefits may be impacted under some of the recent changes. So it looks specifically looking at support with Social Security, VA, housing, and immigration. And so there was an image that was popped in the chat with some of that information about those pop-up offices.
Okay, I like it. One last call for questions before we move on.
I got one question directly messaged to me, just asking if we could email out these helpful places to start to the folks on the call. So absolutely, I think maybe that might be even more helpful than trying to pop them in the chat for you all. So we can follow up with this with an email with those links. We can also include just the full presentation for anyone who may want to reference it as well.
Yes.